Yes, just looking over your history, you started with Crash and then it was Jack and then it was Uncharted. And it seems like it grows from a more mature storytelling standpoint with every game. Jack got into some pretty dark territory, and obviously Uncharted is almost like a movie in the way it's told, and Last of Us is almost like the pinnacle of that so far. But there's always been like that sci-fi fantasy element thrown into all of them. Why do you think that you still introduce that in stories that are realistic otherwise? Like The Last of Us is really grounded aside from the zombies.
Infected, by the way.
The Infected, I'm sorry.
We actually, I'm totally joking. Well, I'd say that we tried actually to create a story and a world without them, but what it brought was a level of tension that we could all, it's a palpable tension because you've played through scenarios with the Infected and you know the difficulty they bring to your own, play experience, that now I can project that same tension onto all of the surviving humans inside of that world. That without that kind of pressure, that external pressure being applied, you can't really understand why they're making the choices that they're making to kill one another and take somebody's shoes,
and one
for
thing,
life.
One thing we tried early on to do with the story is say, do we need the Infected? Because you could tell a story about a plague, and it's just about people getting sick. And what we found was that then it's all exposition, like people talking about a disease, but I don't get to experience it. At the end of the day, we're making a survival action game. So by adding the Infected back in, you could play what it was like to try to survive this thing.
Which goes back to the whole, the mantra forever is like show, don't tell. The more I can play it, the more I experience myself, the more I understand it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're kind of in the position now of people want a new Last of Us. Like that's what happens in this industry when you make something that people love. Like, do you ever feel, because regardless of what happens, people will either be excited or they'll be disappointed at first if you announce a new IP and then excited when they see what it is. But do you ever feel the weight of this expectations of fans are itching for something else in this universe, or do you just try to ignore it all and do whatever your heart wants you to do?
We try to do what our heart wants.
You can't help but be affected by that, or sometimes we came off of Uncharted 2 and you're like, what are we doing? How the hell do we top that game? And and at this point we just said, let's not try. Let's just do this thing that, which we didn't think would be as successful as Uncharted when we were working on it. And it's the same thing with the DLC. When we started working on Left Behind, we at some point you ask yourselves, people have certain expectations of what this game should be, or how intense it should be, or who Ellie is. And at some point we're like, well, this is what we want to do, and we really want to play this. We really like it. And
I wish I could give myself amnesia and play this game.
Yeah.
I think it would be awesome. You know what I mean? But again, we see those flaws and those bugs. But even right now with Left Behind about to get in people's hands. Sure, the single player campaign, we're super proud of that, and that's awesome. It's beyond our wildest dreams as far as how it's being received. But now there's this other anxiety, which is we've built up an expectation with our fans of what The Last of Us is, and here comes this other story, and we're again moving past our own comfort zone. We would like to play Left Behind. If we knew nothing about it, we would be excited about playing Left Behind.
We want to surprise players. Oh wait, I get to do this in this kind of horror survival action game. But it's awesome. And that's kind of how we approached it.
Do you think the time has passed for something like Jak and Daxter? Because Jak, like I said, the story is actually really interesting in those, but it's also anthropomorphic animals that don't dominate gaming anymore. Do you think the time has passed for that kind of stuff? Do you think if you're telling a mature story, you have to go The Last of Us route?
I look at Pixar, as far as if they can tell stories with fish that make you cry.
Yes.
You know
repeatedly.
What I mean? There's no limit. If it's a good story, right? The trick is you have to make a believable world. Yeah. As long as you stick to your own constraints and restrictions that those characters have to obey, then it doesn't matter what the animal, creature, anthropomorphic, tentacle beast is. It's as long as...
It can be cars.
Yeah, it can be cars
or planes.
Exactly.
Not planes.
Not planes. You can't do planes. Planes won't work.
Yeah, it seems, I've never talked to you guys before. It seems like you have respect for your characters. That's almost the way I'd classify it. And I think that's...
Well, we love them.
Yeah, it seems like that's like might be one of the, because it's, you know, I mean, I love Uncharted and I love Nathan Drake's relationship with everyone he's in, like, you know, Sully and stuff, and it seems like just talking to you like that, it might just be that you respect them so much that you do write them as people.
Well, from a storytelling standpoint, you approach a scene from every character that's in the scene. It's like, as Ellie, what do I want here and what's stopping me and how far I'm willing to go to get it? As Joel, what do I want here? As Henry, as Sam, as Tess, as any one of these characters, I have to have real wants and I have to approach the scene, and that's how you write honestly. And then you kind of have to ignore tropes or anything else and just say, am I being honest to this character, regardless of what anyone else might think? And if the answer is yes, then that's correct for what's happening in the scene.
By putting yourself in the position of actually exploring, like, the inward desire of that character, you're actually, it's like compassion. It's literally like a Buddhist sort of method of writing, of like, you're now allowing to express empathy. You understand now what another human is going through. And then, especially in this world, you're exploring so many different dimensions that it's not just like one note, like kill the bad guy or save the princess or whatever that thing is, but instead it's like there's complexities to relationships. And there are dilemmas, you know, I want two good things or I want two bad things, and that's hard choices. But by putting myself and Neil through these experiences of like, well, what are they after here? You can't help but to love like the conflict inside of that person. So they become real.
So while I was playing The Last of Us, like it kind of felt like the movie closer to me in a lot of ways. I don't know if you know this movie, but like it had Natalie Portman and Julia Roberts and Clive Owen, but it was a bunch of people I didn't like, and it was tough to root for anyone, I guess. And The Last of Us is similar, that aside from Ellie, there was a lot of people that I just didn't think were good people. But I think one of the things that I really commend the game for is like David. David's a cannibal. Like you can't get worse than that, right? As far as people go, but you understood why he was a cannibal, which was really weird for me to have that like empathy for him. Like how the heck do you even do that? Because like he should have just been like this terrible villain, but he wasn't a terrible villain. He was just like, he was a real person in a terrible situation.
Well, you start by saying, okay, clearly he's a leader and people trust him, and he probably made a lot of decisions that have kept these people alive, probably really hard decisions. And to be a leader of a group, he has to be charismatic. He has to, you know, be able to just inspire them to take these actions. So those are all really positive qualities a person can have. But then you say, like, okay, well, he's got some negative qualities, and then, you know, that's what gives him kind of an interesting dimensionality. And that's what we try to do with The Last of Us specifically, is to say, this world is so harsh, to survive in it, to become an adult in it, you probably had to make a horrible decision someplace in your life where I could see how if you judge them on that level, you might not like them. But for me, it's a place of respect where, yeah, like you had to make some horrible, like I don't envy this life, and yet people still try to find their humanity within it.
It feels like a lot of what makes a character is not in the cutscene, it's how you act and how you interpret those actions. And The Last of Us was really great in that regard, because like I felt really bad killing, but I kind of did it anyway, and it kind of made Joel a character I didn't like because I didn't like myself in that game. So I don't know if I'm like, I don't know if other people approach games like this. But that was
when you say you didn't like him, like, did you still enjoy him, like as far as you could understand him, or you just like, I want to have nothing to do with this guy? It was
the latter one, and I understood him, but it was also just like I really didn't like him, and it felt like every choice was just like a choice I didn't. And then maybe it is just because it's a mirror, because looking back, because I would have made some of the choices, but I didn't like those choices, I guess. And that's why it was so uncomfortable, and it was an uncomfortable game to play at times, just because there was so many of these characters who I didn't agree with their choices, except for Ellie, who was like this almost, I don't know, just this weird pure beacon of hope in an otherwise drab world. So I don't know what it's like to create a game like that, or if this is your intention, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we look at stories that we're inspired by, like Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, where you have, you know, a murderer. But it's a murderer with kids, and you end up rooting for him by the end. But if you think about it, he's taken a job where he's going to like take money to go kill these guys that have really kind of paid for their crime already. and he ends up like killing a whole bunch of lawmen in a saloon at the end. But to me, he's such an interesting character to see how he ticks, how like what makes a person like that tick.
So games aren't ambiguous. Like it's almost always like I'm clearly the good guy and you're clearly the bad guy. Like in Last of Us is really ambiguous. Like is that something that you thought about in development, that you wanted this ambiguity so people like me can put like, oh, Joel's a bad father just because of my life experience? Like is that something you really actively wanted and to shy away? Because Uncharted was the exact opposite of that.
Yes, in that we wanted to kind of like, look, we're like big fans of, we just talked about Unforgiven, but like Coen Brothers or No Country for Old Men, where all this storytelling is done in such a subtle way where there's like almost no music. It's so sparse in dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Nobody's telling you what to feel or think.
And it's so much of it is what you're projecting into it, that it kind of makes you part storyteller in a way. And it tells you like, if you want to get something out of the story, you have to be engaged with it. You can't just have it spoon feed you everything. Because those are the stories that we like. So we're like, well, let's do our best to create that kind of experience, which means like, we're constantly asking ourselves, okay, what is this moment really about? What's the least we have to say or do to kind of convey that and no more? And that's been the challenge throughout.
I swear.